Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something really exciting. We are going to seamlessly synthesize three pretty dense behavioral frameworks into a single, highly actionable compass. If you've ever struggled to understand human psychology in high-stakes environments, or maybe you've just wondered how team dynamics truly operate beneath the surface, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to map out exactly how leaders think, how they fail, and how human behavior is engineered.
It's this recurring historical and organizational tragedy. Why do visionary leaders so often become tyrants? And on the flip side, why do incredibly rational, brilliant leaders so often become completely cold and detached? The answer actually isn't that they're bad people. The answer lies in the structural mechanics of human cognition. Okay, let's dive into this and unpack the architecture behind these behavioral traps.
Here's a quick roadmap for us. We'll be covering the four leadership poles: colors and context, the cognitive bias engine, the leadership compass, the continuous audit protocol, and finally, the mature leader synthesis.
Part 1. The four leadership poles, the archetypes of command.
Now, right off the bat, it's absolutely crucial to understand that these aren't rigid boxes you trap people inside. Think of them more as archetypal directions. Our first direction is the North Pole, the visionary. Driven by this deep belief that the world must become something else, this leader is completely future-facing. They're structural, they're disruptive, and they're highly motivated by purpose and the imagination of a brand new order. They see entire systems, not just isolated events, and they accept conflict as just the natural cost of change. A fantastic cultural example here is Lelouch Lamperouge from the anime Code Geass. He leads by designing a future and literally forcing reality to bend toward it. But the shadow side of the North Pole is dangerous. Because they value that end goal so highly, they can easily become manipulative, totally ignore the human cost, and slide right into tyranny if left unchecked. Directly opposite that, we have the South Pole, the Guardian. Their absolute core concern is what must be protected. Their ultimate leadership phrase is, "I will bear what others cannot." This pole leads from a place of intense responsibility, endurance, and sacrifice. They really aren't looking for glory. They're just holding the line. Think of Erwin Smith from Attack on Titan. He carries this massive, heavy burden of command and absorbs the personal cost for collective survival. But just like the North, the South has a shadow. Their fierce dedication to duty can actually mutate into a rigidity that normalizes suffering, suppressing necessary innovation simply for the sake of endurance. Moving over to the East Pole, we find relational and harmonizing leadership. This leader is constantly asking, "Who are we together?" Their operating principle is no one is left outside the circle. The East leader's real superpower is connection, trust, and boosting morale. They read the emotional atmosphere of a room perfectly and build people up way before they build systems. Naruto Uzumaki is basically the quintessential example here, leading through pure empathy and this unwavering faith in his people. However, this deep need for inclusion creates a severe shadow risk. The East leader will often avoid making the hard, necessary decisions just to preserve group harmony, leaning a bit too far into naivety when strict strategy is actually what's required. And on the opposite end of that, we reach the West Pole, rational and strategic leadership. This is the most coldly cognitive of the four directions. The West leader asks, what produces the best outcome? And their daily mantra is, find the most effective move. They are highly analytical, decisive, and they operate with minimal emotional interference. Think of Light Yagami from Death Note, representing a very extreme form of strategic control. They thrive in complex systems and conflict because they can literally outthink slower opponents. But their shadow is severe, dehumanization. By treating people merely as variables in a giant equation, the West leader risks deep arrogance and total isolation. All right, Section 2, colors, context, and teams, deconstruct and deploy. Let's quickly deconstruct the baseline operational drivers of teams using Thomas Erickson's colors. Reds, they're your dominators. They seek to influence action and will simply ignore disadvantages if they find them boring. Yellows are your visionaries. Highly energetic, super persuasive, and optimistic, but often completely lacking in any operational realism. Greens are the stabilizers. They absolutely hate pressure and will physically lean backward when things get uncertain. And then the blues are the analysts. To them, careless work isn't just an error, it's a cardinal sin.
But here is where we need to apply a red team critique, meaning we actively challenge our own models to find the vulnerabilities. The idea of static colors is kind of a myth. So the crucial takeaway here is this equation. Behavior equals personality multiplied by surrounding factors. As a strategist, you don't use colors to box people in. You use them to deploy people out. You don't just accept that a yellow lacks realism, you manipulate the surrounding factors to engineer an adaptive team dynamic. For instance, you pair the blues' meticulous quality control with the red's intense execution drive to literally force an elite operational capacity.
Section 3. The Cognitive Bias Engine, Surviving Complexity.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this 188 figure represents the number of identified cognitive biases in the Cognitive Bias Codex. But the vital insight from our sources is that these biases are absolutely not bugs or flaws in human design. They are the price we pay for surviving complexity. They are necessary evolutionary shortcuts operating under incredibly severe constraints. So the Codex organizes all 188 of those biases into 4 massive existential problems. First, information. There's simply way too much data in reality, so the brain acts as the filter, which inherently risks blindness, ignoring the truth. Second, meaning. Raw information is chaotic, so the brain acts as the storyteller to connect the dots, which risks delusion, inventing truth. Third, action. We have a desperate need to act fast to survive, so the brain becomes the warrior, relying on quick heuristics, which risks premature conclusions, basically rushing the truth. And finally, memory. Mental storage is expensive, so the brain becomes the archivist, compressing what happened, which risks historical distortion, rewriting truth. Your mind is essentially a continuous compression engine.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Cardinal Leadership Compass, the Grand Synthesis.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why leaders fail. Each leadership pole is naturally vulnerable to a specific cognitive quadrant. The North visionary leader is obsessed with meaning and narrative, making them highly susceptible to Quadrant 2, delusion and misdiagnosing reality. The West rational leader is obsessed with executive decision-making, typing them right to Quadrant 3, rushing to premature conclusions and acting wrongly. The South duty leader focuses on preservation, linking them to Quadrant 4, historical distortion and learning wrongly through rigidity. And the East relational leader is a human-centric signal filter, aligning perfectly with Quadrant I, blindness, where they completely miss hard realities just to preserve harmony.
Section 5. The Continuous Audit Protocol. Auditing your blind spots. So to integrate these poles and avoid these specific failures, you have to subject yourself to a tactical Socratic audit. And honestly, this isn't just about self-reflection. It is a vital facilitation method for teaching your team how to think critically and navigate high-pressure situations together. If you want to integrate the East, ask the information audit question, what am I ignoring? To integrate the North, do a meaning audit. What assumptions am I adding? To balance the West, a decision audit. What conclusion am I rushing toward? And to check the South, a memory audit. What story am I rewriting? By actively asking these 4 provocative questions, you force your brain and your team's collective brain to pause its natural compression engine and see reality as it actually is. Section 6. The Mature Leader Synthesis. The Anti-Dogmatic Ideal.
The truly mature leader is intensely anti-dogmatic. They don't just choose one pole and camp out there forever. Instead, they fluidly integrate all 4 to maintain long-term resilience. They synthesize motivations, confidently speaking all 4 languages simultaneously. I know where we are going, I know what we must carry, I know who we must protect, and I know exactly how to execute. As we look at the hyper-complex landscape that will define the executive role in 2027, this kind of integration is no longer optional. A prime example of this synthesis is Yang Wenli from Legend of the Galactic Heroes, a leader who was strategic, humane, duty-aware, yet strictly anti-tyrannical. They play the infinite game, prioritizing the long-term survival and health of the organization over short-term, finite victories.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct, honestly, kind of uncomfortable challenge based on everything we've just uncovered. Which leadership pole do you over-rely on? And what truth are you currently filtering out just to survive? Take a hard look at your own operational blind spots. Apply this compass and start your continuous audit today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the architecture of human leadership.